There are a lot of people who will use the phrase that music is their religion. Do you think that there's that much of an effect from music that it can actually affect someone's belief systems and kind of serve as a form of religion?
I think a lot of times people pick their music based on their beliefs, and that music tends to reflect their beliefs and doesn't necessarily change them, just naturally goes along with them because that's the reason that they picked that music to begin with.
Well, what do you say when somebody's listening to like really misogynistic rap that's just filled with vulgar things, but they're actually a really great person? And I can think of some examples of that in my school. I think that just because you listen to a type of music doesn't necessarily brand you as that, but it may influence the way you think about things. So I sort of agree with that a little bit.
So Claire, you brought up an interesting point that kind of speaks to the general question that we're asking tonight. The general question being, is it culture affecting music, or is it music affecting culture? Claire was saying that she believes that people choose their music based on what they already believe, as opposed to music changing what they believe. So I'm going to open it up to the broad question of the evening, specifically, staying focused on this particular generation, late 40s, early 50s. Do you think that the culture was more affected by the kind of music that emerged, or do you think that the music that emerged was an effect of the culture that already existed, or a little bit of both?
I think it was the music was created based on the culture. I think at that time there was a lot of people doing the same thing, very mainstream, and rock and roll was this way to rebel, and a lot of people were looking for that, and that's why rock and roll emerged so much, is because there was a need for people to break out, and that's what rock and roll provided.
Well,
right. Go ahead.
Well, the music is definitely impacted by the culture, but then the culture begins to get impacted by the music as things go on like farther into the future, though, and it's kind of a cycled sort of thing.
Which rolls us right along into the next couple of decades following the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They continued the evolution of rock and roll, among other things. So again, to kind of get an introduction to some of the culture, some of the music at the time, let's roll a quick clip about the 60s and 70s.
This heart of mine, I keep my eyes wide open all the time.
When I had you to myself, didn't want you around.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad. I thought love was only true in fairy tales. Come on, now touch me, babe.
I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be.
You sweat gon' make you groove.
Or a man who makes potions in the traveling show.
In this great future which is life, you can't forget your past. So dry your tears, I say.
So again, that's just kind of a small piece of a lot of the culture and music that was going on at the time, 60s and 70s, which kind of ushered in a new generation, kind of the hippie generation. There was also a lot of protests at the time, start of the civil rights movement, end of the civil rights movement. Very big time of change, a lot of calls for peace. So the question that I'm going to open up with is how you think this evolved from the culture that we were just looking at from just a decade earlier in the 50s and late 40s.
No, boy, I don't really know. I think, there's certain things that happened in the, 60s and 70s, like Vietnam. I was, researching earlier today, songs that they wrote about it. And that was definitely culture, and then music, because they wrote songs about it. It was, it's a tragedy. So, it was inspired by that. And, but then, me and Foster were talking earlier today, then there was Michael Jackson, and the way he did it was we also were doing, talking about music videos and how, that was more, music and then culture because, like I said, with Elvis Presley, I think Michael did something very different where he showed people something new. And then everyone kind of wanted to emulate it, and they still do to this day. So, I mean...
Good point, and I'm actually glad you brought up the point about some of the Vietnam was going on at the time, and there was a lot of music in reaction to that cultural and societal event. Along those lines, though, do you think that, as you were saying earlier, Tate, about there's a cycle? Do you think that then the music that was created as a result of that cultural event affected the future movement of the culture in the 60s and 70s? Did the music in turn have an effect on the historical events?
Yeah, I think it kind of, I think it kind of woke everyone up to kind of realize what was going on at the time, because everyone loves music, and once they listen to it, and it was kind of related to that and Vietnam, and there's all sorts of rock songs about it, but it's I think it affects it where people, you wake up and just not in conversation, but in music, and I think it brings attention to everyone in a way of, it brings attention to what happened. So I think I don't know, it just wakes everyone up in a different way, I guess.